What's up, Facebook Live? Welcome to Northeast Kayak Fishing TV. Today's Tournament Tuesday. We got special guest Kenneth Mitchell from Fishing Grab Bag in the house. He's going to explain to us what Fishing Grab Bag is, how it was started, where it's going from here, and all the ins and outs of how this whole thing's going to be put together. And then we'll get into some kayak fishing talk. So without further ado, we're going to bring him in now. How you doing, Ken?
Good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be on.
First, we'll let you tell everybody where you're from.
So I'm from Maine, just outside of Bangor. So we're about probably 2.5 hours north of the border between New Hampshire.
Yep, I'm familiar with the area.
Yep, fairly centralized.
Yeah, many of the guests might not be so familiar with that area, but I'm definitely familiar with it. Well, what is Fishing Grab Bag?
So what Fishing Grab Bag is it started out as kind of an idea. We've seen obviously a lot of the boxes, the mystery tackle boxes and the monster bass and all this. And so what we wanted to do was put together a box of stuff that was useful versus a box of stuff that has filler material.
Correct.
And so we also wanted to bring to the people some baits that you might not see in some of these other boxes. Like in February we had top shelf swim baits, which they're $12 a piece, and we're doing a $19.99 box as our entry level box, and that bait went out in the February box. So we're trying to bring some higher end stuff, but also some stuff you might not have heard of. But we're also trying to put in, all your popular brands, Strike King, Z-Man, and some of the new companies that are coming out. What we're trying to avoid, though, is to replicate what's already being done. So our purpose is to, we don't spend a lot on advertising. We try to keep as many pennies in the box as we can. That way, I could spend $1,000 on advertising, but every time I do that, I got to take that from somewhere.
Right.
So the goal is that it started slow and it's just working by word of mouth and some small, advertising spots on Facebook, but we're trying to keep away from, specially printed boxes and all that sort of thing, because every time we spend money on advertising, promos, that money comes out of the boxes. It has to come from somewhere.
Correct. And I can tell you firsthand, I've got some of those other boxes that you mentioned at the beginning there, and that you're correct. I mean, there's fillers in there, stuff that I never use. It's taking up space in my basement. I throw it in the kids' tackle box. Half of the stuff that I get in those boxes I don't even use. So it's nice to see that there's going to be one out there that it's going to be full of quality product. So you're going to do a lot of like the local guy stuff.
So we're doing a few local brands. Sematus Baits out of Mass.
I'm familiar with them. I see them.
He was in February's box. A new jig company was in February's box, Giltech Jigs. Super innovative jig design. Probably the first one I've seen on the market that has any real innovation, so to speak, in the jig market in how many years? I mean, how many jigs have you seen that are pretty much the same?
I actually I saw that swim bait head that they had advertised it on Facebook. I came across it. Very cool design. I like the head design on that swim jig.
Yeah, and the locking mechanism on that jig is just incredible. It really it makes the jig different. So we featured that in February, I believe it was. So we had two of those in the box, which was about a $15 value, just those two jigs. It was $12 and change, $13, something like that, just for those two pieces.
Wow.
and the other stuff, and that like I said, that other swim bait was in there. But one of the other angles we're looking to try and capture that I don't really see that's been captured yet is design specific boxes. So like in March, we're doing a box based on one bait company, and so all the stuff that we had for that company would go in that box.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And then yeah, and then so we're also trying to make some different angles, like because I mean I bass fish, I know you bass fish, but I also troll. You know, I also fly fish. I'll cast for whatever, you know. So we're trying to put some boxes and stuff together that are more, you know, like a trolling box or a bank casting box, you know, a swim bait box.
Right.
And we've been in contact with some really high value swim baits and trying to get some, you know, some more really high end stuff in the box. But you know, it's pricey because these swim baits sell for upwards of $100.
Yeah, they are super pricey. At the Boxborough show this year, the New England Fishing Expo, there was one of those swim bait companies in there, and I mean, when the doors opened, there was a rush like it was Black Friday, man. I mean, you see all these younger guys running across the room. I mean, for this booth, and the guy sold out within like a half hour.
What was the company?
I don't remember because I don't get into that big swim bait stuff. But I mean, he sold out like within a half an hour. It's a 3-day show, and he sold out of this certain swim bait in a half hour. Insane.
Yeah, I mean one of the things that we looked at for this for March's box was Fish Lab. It's a new company out of Canada, and they're owned. I think their parent company is Okuma, and I happened to come across them, and I was in a store, and I come across one of them, and I thought, wow, that's a pretty good looking bait. So you know, I contacted them, and that's what we did for March. And so far, everything I've heard from everyone that got the box was pretty happy with the outcome. So I was pleased with that.
It was it was Piz Swim Baits. Thank you, Dustin Stevens, for tuning in. Piz Swim Baits. I'm not familiar with them, but I guess all the swim bait guys are.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out because you know that's something that we would definitely want to look at putting in a box at some point.
Right. Now, kind of describe what made you start it.
So what made me start this? Well, as you know, I've been in this fishing gig for a while. You know, I started making my own stuff in 2000, I think 2005, I think it was, and I've been kind of active ever since. And I drew up the plans to start it, and well, you know, it's going to cost X amount of money. You got to get all these suppliers in. You got to do all this and that and the other thing. And finally, I just said, you know, I'm gonna run with it, and if it makes money and it's profitable and we can do it on a long-term basis, then great. If it doesn't, I have a whole wall of baits and I can fish for the rest of my life. You know, and that's really what it boiled down to was do I just do it and with the theory in mind that each box we're not going to make a lot on, but the goal is to eventually sell a lot of boxes.
Right.
And go at it from an angle where we're not spending money. We're just letting it kind of grow. And so far that's worked. I mean, it's growing, it's going along, and we've been relatively happy with the success of it so far.
Good. Explain the different levels of subscription, because I know you have like the $19.99 box,
Sure.
And then you have.
Yeah. So what we got is right now, the way the website is set up, we can only do one-time orders. Because what we found out, of course, after we started, was that in order to do a subscription box, you have to have a certain background in your website, and that background was somewhere around $4,000. Oh. Which, yeah, I mean it's not an overbearing amount of money, but it takes away from the initial startup, you know.
Right.
So we decided to just go with the one-time box, and with the theory that if people were happy, they would come back and buy another one. until we get to a point where we can drop $4,000 on the framework for subscriptions.
Okay, so it's
So
not really a monthly subscription. People can just go and buy it whatever month they can afford it
buy any,
and buy it.
yep, anytime they can afford it, they can hop on. But so like if you buy one in March, you're gonna get the March box. You know, if you buy one in April, you're gonna get what's coming in April.
Right.
So each month you can go on and buy it, and you can buy 2 March boxes if if that's what you want. If you got one and you loved it, and you said, "Geez, I'd like to get that value again," you could jump right back on, do it again.
Right. That's awesome.
So like for instance, in let's see, in March, the MSRP of the box was just over $28, and that was our $20 box.
That's not bad.
So when you take $4 or $5 shipping, so really you're paying $15 for $28 worth of baits and $4 or $5 shipping.
Right.
Is what it breaks down
right.
to.
And you're getting stuff that you don't know what it is, and you might never have bought it. I mean, that's why I get those subscriptions, is because something might come in that I've never even come across.
Right.
And you're getting to see new stuff. That's why I do those subscriptions. So, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if
right, I mean that's what we thought. So the levels are: we got the $19.99 Everyday Angler. It's for guys that want to get out there, try 4 or 5 new baits, see what comes out. It's a really good box. It has a decent spread between four to 6 baits is what we're seeing in that box roughly. Then we got our Pro Angler, which is $49.95, stuffed right full of stuff. I mean, this month it had Strike King, Fish Lab, Crypto, Giltech. I mean, it was a pile of stuff in there. And then we have our Ultimate Angler box, which is $99.99 or $99.95. I can't remember. That's typically going to be made up of 1 or 2 high-end baits, and then we'll use all of our normal March stuff to fill in around it.
Nice.
So you might find a $50 bull shad in those boxes or something along those lines.
Wow. That's a bull shad. I mean, I see those guys at the expos too, man. I don't know how people spend that kind of money on a swim bait.
They do.
I hook that thing into a stump, I'm gonna be real upset.
Right. I mean, but that's the market right now.
Yeah.
People want to throw those expensive baits, and you get an opportunity to get that bait plus a handful more at a discount. So it makes sense to try those different levels out. And I know they're not made for everyone.
Right.
We get that. We know that dropping $100 for some people is just not something that they're going to do. And that's just how it is. They probably wouldn't do that at the store either.
Right.
So we have to ask them to trust us, so we got to build
exactly.
that. And that takes time. We've got, like, in fact, I planned on showing you March's box while we're here. That way they could get an idea of what is going to be in that box.
Yeah, man, go ahead. You show it.
So, all right. So in March, what we had was a new company up and coming called Crypto. I want to say it's a 5-inch worm. It's a watermelon red. I think there's 10 in the bag, or maybe 12. I can't remember the count. But really nice soft plastic bait coming out of Georgia, and it's a solid product made in the USA, which is always good. Obviously, we can't do everything made in the USA. It's just not feasible. Right. We got the coffee tubes from Strike King. These are the smaller fat tubes, the 2.75-inch and watermelon candy, I believe it was. Yep. Our feature bait. Oh, we'll do that one last. We got the new Red Eye Shad 2-tap tungsten in there. So I thought that was a really cool bait.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
Yeah, it definitely has a different sound than the other ones. And then our what do you want to call it? The feature bait for this month was the Fish Lab Soft BioGill swim bait. That was in the box as well. That's about a $9.99 bait right there, just for that one.
Yep.
So those four items right there totaled just over 28. Like I said, just a few pennies over $28. And you're getting them to your door for less than $20.
Wow, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean it's a
And
reasonable
it's
deal, and
it's all
as
it's all stuff that's usable. I mean, you can use that stuff. It's not
right,
garbage
yeah,
that's going to get thrown in the corner. I mean, that worm definitely looked like a good worm to throw. Who doesn't throw a red eye
yeah,
shad? I mean,
right, exactly. I mean that was the goal was we want to put stuff in the box that people use on a routine basis. Otherwise, you're buying a box that you might throw three baits in your trash can, really.
right. I mean, that's pretty much what I do
You
when
know,
I give them to my kids because they're going to go in their tackle box. They're going to get lost somewhere or broken or thrown in a tree.
right. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So our goal is to try and avoid that and try and put stuff in there that people want. And of course, there's growing pains with that, like anything else. We might find that we thought a bait was a big hit, and it wasn't.
Right.
But we'll grow and we'll take those lickings as they come.
Now, how are the first customers? I mean, because this is a brand new thing. You only did February, and now we're only 10 days into March. Uh, how are the
Right.
customers responding to the product?
Uh, the ones that have bought it have loved it. They're very happy with the value. In fact, a couple of them have already gone on the Facebook page and put reviews on, and those show up on the website. So, yeah. So far we've had I haven't had a bad response yet. So, I think we're headed down the right direction. We just got to stay on the path and make sure we're doing the right thing by the customers.
Yeah, it seems like you're definitely going the right path. Um, just by the products you just shown, it shows that you're not putting trash in the box and shipping it out with maybe one good bait like these other ones do. And I can say sometimes you don't even get one good bait in the box. Uh, they throw in.
Right. And and to be upfront, our profit margin is fairly low on each box. Because of that, because we're trying to put these higher end baits in the more expensive product, it keeps our profit margin quite low. So it really is a long term. We got to sell a lot of boxes every month to make it worthwhile. But we know there's some growing pains, and when I can call Strike King and say, hey, I need 10,000 of this bait, I can get a better deal.
Right,
And then that's when the box really starts to get ridiculous.
right. Just like anything, the more you buy, the cheaper it gets.
Yeah, and honestly, our goal is not to keep that money. So if we can get people buying that many boxes a month, it's going to show up in the boxes. It's not going to be pure profit for us.
Great. That's fantastic. What are some future plans for Fishing Grab Bag? Where would you like to see this go?
I would like to see this by the end of the year. I would like to have 1,000 consistent monthly buyers. Now that's a lofty goal, but shoot for the stars, hit the moon type of thing.
Right.
We know that it could grow exponentially quick, but we also know it can grow really slow, and we're okay with either. We have the space to grow quickly, and we have the space to go slow as well. So we could, like, I'm in the shop right now, so we could blow up and I'll fill the shop full of baits next week, or we take our time and it grows and we have consistent buyers that are back every month.
Right. That's a good goal to have. Do you plan on offering like anything else through Fishing Grab Bag, like any other subscription type things, or is that it? Just you got those 3 subscriptions, and that's where you want to stay with it.
We're no so one of the things we're working through, and it's more of a logistics thing, and we're trying to figure out, like, so for instance, like in March we have the $49.95 Pro Angler, but we also have the $49.99 feature bait box. So each month we'll do a box of feature baits, and then hopefully we'll be seeing some more of the other type of fishing stuff in the future. So you'll have We've been in touch with Mooselik Wobblers. That's a trolling bait, a relatively popular bait, and a few others that we're in hopes to pull on.
That's pretty cool though, with the other types of baits outside of bass fishing, because you don't see anything like that for actual anglers. You know, people that fish for everything. You
Right.
get those guys that go fly fishing in the mountains and all that stuff. That you never see anything that's marketed towards them, as far as the subscription services go. So that's a pretty cool, good idea. I think
Yeah,
that'll work
I think
out.
that. Yeah, and I think that the goal is to put the right stuff in that box, and I think it'll be a hit.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. Um, is there anything else on fishing grab bag that you'd like to touch base on before we switch over to kayak fishing?
No, just go get yourself a grab bag, and now we'll go to kayak fishing.
All right, guys, you heard him. Go over to fishinggrabbag.com. Get yourself a box, a $20 box, a $50 box, $100 box. And from the looks of it, what he just showed me, I mean, it's definitely going to be worth it. So now let's get into fishing. So when we first met a couple years ago,
Yep.
you were a bass boat guy who was just starting to dabble into the whole kayak fishing scene.
Yep.
Now, what would you say swayed you to move towards the kayak fishing?
So, so, so I had my bass boat for years and years, and I fished the local tournament scene, 2 or 3 different circuits, and what I found was it seemed like every year we were fishing the same lake at the same time of year, and pretty much fishing the same spot. Like, and I found myself trying to go do things differently. Like, there's a lake that's up this way called Scudic Lake, and every year when we fished it, there was 2 spots where fish were, and I knew that. There was an old rock field at the way end of the lake, which I could never beat anybody to, and there was a spot that was about halfway down the lake that was a big sawdust pile, and again, it was one of those things where it only would support one boat, maybe 2. So you had the same. I felt like I was constantly doing the same thing. So I got irritated, and every meeting was it was a piss fest, really. Everyone was like, "Oh, we can't fish this lake at this time of year because we won't catch nothing. We should fish it here," and and it's the same old all the time. So I was getting pretty fed up with that, and I was also finding that fishing with a partner really I liked. I mean, I don't mind fishing with a partner, but I always never minded fishing by myself either.
Right.
So if I was that guy that if I didn't have a partner, I wouldn't actively look for one. I was okay with challenging the teams by myself and doing okay. Like, I was usually in the middle of the pack.
Right.
So I got a message here. I just want to get rid of it. There we go. So I found that I was really just wasting a lot of money, to be quite honest. I mean, by the time I went and filled up on gas and filled up on fuel for the truck and fuel for the boat and food and travel, and all that stuff, it was costing me 200 and change every tournament.
Wow.
And that kind of got old. So I had kayaks from Old Town Canoe. I had the Predators, some of the first model Predators that came out before they had the pedal drives and all the other fancy stuff that's coming out now, which I got to tell you is pretty awesome.
Insane.
But it's crazy, man. I was on the ultra secret group of people that knew that kayak was coming out with the new Minn Kota. Yeah. And man, I got to tell you, it's just an awesome platform. But aside from that, so I've been fishing at my local lake where my camp is out of a kayak for a while, and I just enjoyed being out there, and it's quiet, and and you're just kind of taking your time and working through whatever. And so I finally come to the realization that I was fed up with the bass boat circuit. And so I just said to my wife one day, I said, I'm selling the boat and kayak. And of course, she kind of looked at me a few times, and I don't know if she wanted to hospitalize me or what, because I was relatively certain I would never not own a bass boat. And just one day, I just come to the realization that I don't mind being on the water by myself. I rather enjoy it. I can take my kayak anywhere. I don't have to be at a big lake. I don't have to have a huge boat launch.
Right.
You know, I can go to East Podunk nowhere,
right,
and throw my kayak in and catch fish that no one's ever seen because they don't go.
Exactly. That's one of the greatest things about it, is you can go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I can throw it in the back of the truck and be gone in 10 minutes, which I found was great. But there's certainly I definitely found there was a learning curve.
Yeah, let's talk about the transition here. Bass boat. I mean, tournament day, you probably got 75 rods in your rod box and 12 on the deck. All the storage boxes full of tackle. I mean, you can take every bit of tackle you own. You can take it with you. So how did that affect you once you transitioned to a kayak? I mean, where you're limited to what you can take.
So I'll be honest. It was painful. It was really painful at first, because when the day I sold my boat, I took everything out, I cleaned it, and when I got into the shop, where on the other side of my shop here, I looked at all the stuff and I thought, shit, what am I? I got too much stuff. And I'm looking at my kayak, and I mean, I've got the Predator PDL, and I'm looking at my kayak, and I've got 20 boxes stacked up of stuff, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? I struggle with necessarily, but how? I knew I fish about 7 baits every single time I go out.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what the conditions are. I know that there's about 7 baits I'm going to fish no matter what's going on. So I looked at those boxes. I looked around. I was like, man, I got too much stuff. And, how do I manage it? So I opened all the boxes up. I looked through them. I went out and bought all new boxes. And why? Just because I have like this condition where I can't function if I don't have something like that. So I went out and I bought like a dozen. In fact, I still have probably 3 or 4 over on the floor over there that I haven't even touched, that I got from Dick's or Walmart or whatever, those waterproof Plano boxes.
Yep.
I started putting things like, I would go through each box and say, okay, I've used this. Haven't used that in a while. Threw it in the trash. And the reason I threw it in the trash was because I didn't want to leave it there to go back to. I probably threw away a few $1,000s worth of product.
I can say I've done that myself.
I couldn't, if I left it there, I was going to be tempted to try and pack it into the kayak.
Yep.
And I didn't want to do that. So I kept the stuff that I use routinely, and I threw the rest in the garbage. And I found that with that transition, I really only fished a handful of stuff and probably 4 different rods.
That's crazy to go from so much stuff to only using 4 rods, and that's crazy. It really is. Do you feel that transition has made you a better angler because you don't have all those options? You have to pretty much know what you're going to do once you get out on the water.
I feel like it's made me a slightly more anxiety-ridden individual. And that's honestly because when I get ready to fish, I get ready to go out, I'm like, okay, I got 5 boxes or 6 boxes I'm taking. I got 4 rods. And I know some of these lakes, and I don't really know. The one thing I found that it's caused me to do is to pick apart a spot a lot better. Because when I was in the bass boat, I'd pull up on a tree, a down tree or something. I might make 10 casts at it, and then I was on. I was going to the next thing.
Right.
And with a trolling motor, I had the Minn Kota autopilot motor, so I could pull up onto a spot and stay relatively put where I wanted to be and fish, my 10 casts and move on. But with a kayak, it's not quite the same for me. So now I have to look at that tree and think, okay, if I come in at this angle, I'll be able to hit, XYZ spots. But if the wind pushes me over, I'm gonna be screwed, and I'm gonna have to play it by ear.
Right.
So it's caused me to really look at a spot differently, which is a good thing, because every live tournament I've been in so far to this point, I've been on the podium. So it's really caused me to change, not necessarily what I fish, but how I fish it.
Right. I would say that is that I've seen that a lot through a lot of anglers. A lot of us have come from bass boat world. I had a bass boat before, and I can say I definitely fish differently with a kayak than I did with a boat. And you're right, you look at it differently. You can't fish it the same way you could from a boat.
No, not at all.
Your
And I
your casts and your angles and everything, they all have to be judged before you even get to that spot, because like you said, the wind, you're going to get blown around.
Right.
If you hook up with a fish, the fish is going to move you. It's not like a boat where you're just going to sit still. I mean, you're in a kayak, you hook into a good 3, 4, 5 pounder. I mean, you're going to get moved.
Right. And, unlike the bass boat, where I sometimes will fish 20-pound tests, and I'll just rip them right into the boat, and now it's caused even so much of my normal fishing to change. Like, I even had to change my casting style, because I was used to standing up on a large open deck, and I could just whip that thing as far as I could,
Right.
or I could underhand flip it to where I was going. And even that has changed to some extent in my kayak.
Yeah, it definitely does. If I go back and whip it, most of the time I end up catching my bait on the rods behind me, and then I got the worst bird's nest in my reel that you've ever seen in your life.
Oh yeah,
I'm not like a lot of kayak guys. Like, I still throw full size rods. Like, I haven't shrunk the size of my rods at all. I still throw like 7.7s and 7.4s and stuff like that. So I whip that thing back, and I've learned now. I've got enough experience now, but at first it was a nightmare.
Yeah, and so how many times have you went to whip it and caught your rudder?
Yeah.
And it hooks up in your rudder, and you can't get the damn thing out. You're trying to, and I'm like you. I'm not a skinny guy. I'm not huge, but trying to get around in the kayak can be a challenge versus a bass boat.
Right.
So I'm trying to unhook that thing from the rudder, which is all the way at the very back of the boat. It can be challenging.
I fished a whole tournament with a Storm 360 GT swim bait attached to my rudder because I couldn't get back there to get it. It got wrapped around it. I cut the line and left it there.
Yeah.
I fished the whole tournament.
Yeah, I've done it. In fact, it's been such a challenge for me, because that's one of the biggest, I think, probably adaptation wise, that's been one of the biggest challenges for me, because I'm like you, I still fish regular size rods.
Right.
And so I'm catching, like, I've caught my net before and casted it right out of the boat. So, and those little things frustrate the shit out of you when you're out there. Like, I've lost fish off the board. My first year fishing, I didn't understand the concept as well. And so I put the fish on the board, and I try and fumble around with my phone, try to get my camera out, and fish would flap a few times and be gone. And I would get, and I'm not, and the people that know me from the bass boat world, I will flip out and break things. And I would get just mad. I would get so pissed off. But I'm in the kayak, so it's not like I could do anything.
Right.
Because, in the bass boat, I would kick rods over the side. I would smash them on the deck, or I would, I I was witnessed at one event having a Mike Iaconelli moment where I twisted the reel right off the rod and threw it in the water. So I really had to adapt to that, handling that anger, that furious anger when I lose something and it's my own fault.
Right. Now, what are you running for a current setup?
Right now, well, it's funny you should ask that. So I'm currently in the Predator PDL right now, which I won't change. I do want to go to the new platform that came out just recently, because we had some of the design features on that integrated in that we really wanted. So I do want to move up to that one if I can sell this one. But right now, my old sonar, which was the what was it called? A Hook 7 II.
Yeah.
It died last year, so I took it off, threw it in the trash, and I've kind of been holding off on buying anything. And I really want the Garmin with the live scope setup and a power pole. I think those two items would really enhance the ability to catch fish.
Right.
Now, I know a power pole is. I've talked to a lot of guys about this, and they're like, well, it's a pricey gadget and blah, blah, blah. But I know that I miss fish because I couldn't sit still at times.
Right. I know guys who have told me that their power pole is more important to them than their fish finder.
Yeah.
They would give up the fish finder for the power pole.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I absolutely agree. Because I know a lot of the times I fish in fairly, a foot of water to, I've been in 6 inches of water and had to pull my prop out and push my way along. So the power pole, I agree, wholeheartedly agree with that. It's just I haven't got one, but I know that would make such a difference in my, like, setting up on a tree or, setting off a rock pile or something.
Right.
It would just be a huge, huge improvement. So probably that'll be the first thing I add this year, if I add anything, if I don't just go with what I have.
Yeah, I'm in the process of building one for my PDL.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of guys out there right now. In fact, someone just messaged me the other day about there's a self. He makes like a little bracket, and it hooks on the back and then flips down.
Yep.
And it's got like a string. You just pull it up, and I think he is selling it for around $50, $60 for the bracket or something like that. So I don't know if I'm going to go with a full-on power pole setup or rig up some sort of lower cost option for the year.
Right.
But I do know for sure that being able to stay put on a kayak versus having the fish finder, I think is far more important.
Right. And as far as the fish finder goes, you're definitely going the right route with the Garmin. I'm running the Garmin, and I am very pleased. I was a Humminbird man since I started fishing, and I made the switch last year because Humminbird still can't get the whole touch screen in an affordable package kind of deal. So I took a chance and I made the switch to Garmin, and yeah, the imaging is not as crisp as Humminbird, but I will sacrifice a little bit of that imaging for the features. I can touch screen, I can put waypoints exactly on a rock. I mean, you can still tell what's a rock, what's a brush pile, what's a fish, and that's all you need a unit for anyways. So I mean, the Garmin works for me. I don't have the Panoptix yet, but that's in the future.
Yeah, and that's kind of my take on it too. Is the Panoptix is probably where I want to end with that, because I do fish, not bass fish, but I actually fish for salmon and togue and lake trout, all those sorts of things. And I think that unit would be super helpful to be able to see when you're fishing 60 feet of water.
Right. I like to crappie fish when I'm not bass fishing, and I feel that Panoptix would be amazing for crappie fishing, especially through the ice.
Oh, yeah, it'd be sick.
Yeah. Just to pull up to a brush pile and aim that thing in there and see crappie stick together. If you find one, you found 100.
Right.
Now,
yeah. So I would Go ahead.
How about like do you do a lot of DIY stuff with your kayaks, or do you just buy the actual products that you're looking for?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of DIY stuff. Um, one, because I'm an idiot,
I ha-
and
uh,
and really I struggle with it. I really do, and it's I feel like I always have to over engineer things, you know. So I if I get into a project, I could be 3 months into it, you know, and I still don't have exactly what I want.
right,
So I found that just buying the stuff that's already out there, it works, man. That's why they buy. That's why they make it.
right, right.
You know, I use the Scotties and the whatever other rod holders when I'm trolling, and you know, and I got to tell you, that's another thing about the Predator PDL is that you can troll at 2 to 2.5 miles an hour all day long and not be tired.
Yep. I troll a chatterbait sometimes. I'll throw a chatterbait out
Yeah,
there and just troll at 2.5 miles an hour, and
yeah,
fish will
you can do
hammer
it all
that
day
thing.
long.
Fish hammer that
I
thing.
have a video. I have a video on one of my other pages that shows me going through like 2 foot, 2.5, 3 foot swells in the middle of a lake, and all the 18-foot boats were coming in. I was headed out, you know, and they were looking at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, you guys are, Christ, you're in an 18-foot boat. What are you worried about?
Right. Yeah,
You know?
I've had some experiences with rough water. I'm not a big fan of rough water. I'm definitely a little baby when it comes to rough water, but it's kept me safe. It's never made me really feel like I was gonna flip over.
No. I used to have the only time I felt, and not flip over, but I've almost swamped my old Predator. I almost swamped it one day 5 times in the same day. But to be fair, I had a trolling motor, a big battery in it. And what was happening, and I didn't realize it until after the fact, was the trolling motor apparatus that I had it set on. Every time it took a wave, it would splash water into my kayak.
Oh.
And I didn't realize that's what was going on. So, like, every big wave I had come in, like, there was that much more water that was being pushed over the side. So, and that was a rough day. And I mean, it was really windy, and I was, you know, I'd stop every probably 30, 40 minutes and dump the kayak out and start over. That was
funny.
in the early days.
Yeah.
But I stayed close to shore because I knew, like, one big wave and I was going for a swim, you know?
Right. Yeah. I'm not so worried about flipping over. It's the losing all my crap that I'm worried about. I don't want to lose all that
true.
stuff. I know I can swim and I
true.
wear my PFD, so I know I'm not going to drown, but I'm worried about losing the thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. That's, you know, that's always a concern, but I lose, you know, when I was in the bass boat world, I was forever losing stuff. Like, it was the worst thing because I had a $600 custom rod that I had sitting on my deck, and we were zipping along, and we caught a wave just right, and it bounced the tip of that rod up, and the wind took it and right off the boat. And I saw it immediately, but by the time I got turned around and went back, it was gone.
Right.
You know, so I was forever losing stuff, and I can say now that I have not lost. I can honestly say I have not lost a rod since I switched. And I used to lose at least one or two a year.
Yeah. I haven't lost one from the kayak yet, and I know a lot of people that have.
I did, however, being a newbie, 2 years ago, my first year out, my couple of buddies said, "Hey, let's go to this spot." I said, "Hey, no problem, let's go." I wasn't honestly thinking about it. And again, this is from the bass boat world. I had my rod sticking up, and I went under a bridge. And you know how that goes.
Yeah. Snap.
All I could hear, and I looked up, and I was like, "Uh-oh." But the rod made it through, but it was pretty tore up. And in fact, I still have it. I still use it. I'm concerned that the eyes are going to come off it at some point, but it's one of my favorite rods, so I haven't gotten rid of it yet.
Yeah, use it till it breaks.
That's what I'm going to do. Use it until she breaks.
Now, what are some of your favorite ways to fish from the kayak? Do you like the deep water, the real shallow backwater that you can get to?
Yeah. So I am a I am definitely a bank, tree, backwater, pad, grass type of angler. I would I would rather be in the swamp all day long and having to push through all the grass and stuff than fish open water for 10 minutes.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I'd rather be in the thickest stuff I could find than over some rock
Yeah,
pile in 60 feet of water.
yeah. I see those guys out there doing that, and I that's great. Um, I've never been real good at deep water,
Right.
so it's one of those things I'd like to learn, and I think the Panoptics would help with that for sure.
Yeah.
But it's never been my cup of tea. I can do just as well, if I can find some grass or I can find some other structure along the bank or even submerged. I'm good to about 12 feet. After that, no good.
Do you drop shot at all or no?
I've tried. I've caught one fish in my whole life drop shotting.
Yeah, I catch pickerel when I drop shot. I can't catch a bass on a drop shot.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just if it's my ADHD that causes me to not be able to sit there long enough to do it, but it's never been. I've tried it. I've even gone out so far as to go out with that only rod and be forced to use it all day, and still can't. I just cannot seem to get it.
Yeah, I can't get it either. But somebody told me to use a heavier weight for guys who are just beginning to drop shot. Use a heavier weight so it's keeping it in contact with the bottom. Like use a
Yeah,
half ounce instead of using like the eighth and the quarter ounces. Use the bigger one. So I'm gonna try that and see if maybe it helps me out a little bit. But I'd rather not drop shot.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm a, I'm a. I think I'm a swim bait guy to be honest.
oh yeah,
You know, I, I can throw a swim bait all day long until my wrists start to swell up.
what's your favorite swim bait?
I would have to say my favorite right now is the bull shad. By far, I would say the bull shad. It's such a good bait.
Now, what size of a swim bait are you throwing? Are you throwing some monstrous 10-inch or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the bull shad, it's a 4-inch bait, and I like that a lot. Um, but one of the baits that I found that I really like is one that I found on a website, Cedar Run, I think is the name of the
I've
place. You have to paint your own.
yeah.
Actually, I have one right here. Hold on. I think I got one. Yeah, right there. So it's this one here, and of course it has the tail's not on it, but it's 8.5, 9 inches, and it's really heavy. And I would throw that on 20, 25 pound test line all day long. And
That's nuts.
my wrist would be swollen right up at the end of the day.
That's nuts. I would never throw anything like that ever. That'd be the
I have thrown some 12-inch swim baits. I did get my hands on an MS Slammer a while ago. I like the bait. Honestly, I used it for a little while, but it's a really nice bait. It's a little big,
right. I mean that
but I definitely will throw it.
yeah, that thing you just showed me is big. I mean the biggest thing I throw is like a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait.
Oh yeah, no, you gotta. I have a lot of 6.5, 6.25 baits on the wall right now, and you know, yeah, it's slower and you don't get as many bites, but boy, you get some awful good ones.
Yeah, I bet. I bet the pike love them too.
I'm a big swim bait fan.
That's crazy. I didn't think that. I didn't think you were much of a swim bait guy, but you.
No, and well, I throw those big stick baits too.
Yeah, yeah. That 10.5. That's
Yeah, I throw that a lot. In fact, I give that a high rating in my book because it's not seen. A lot of guys aren't throwing it. So I'll get into this. I'll get into that heavy grass and I'll throw it along the edge and just kind of bump it along the grass and they'll grab it.
yeah. They will. I mean, I've caught them on 10.5 and 12-inch worms, and you catch fish that are barely as long as the worm, and they eat it.
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. Yep. I think that's probably the biggest stuff that I throw. Other than that, I stay between 4 and 6 inches. Swim baits. I used to be a big. My buddy will testify to this, but I used to be a big crankbait fan. I throw crankbaits all damn day long.
I can't crankbait fish at all.
Yeah, I throw them all day long, catch fish all the time on them.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I just got tired of it or what. I just really kind of stopped.
Yeah, this year that is a huge goal of mine, is to learn how to fish a crankbait. I don't know if I just don't give it the time or what, but I just struggle with it. In my entire life, I've probably caught a handful of fish on a crankbait.
Yeah.
I get frustrated.
I think a lot of people get frustrated with
I get hung up in the grass, and I get so frustrated that I just put it down.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of the thing, is that like a lot of people don't realize, like, it's okay to get hung up in the rock or hung up in the grass, and that's what when that bait frees itself, that's when you get the bite.
Right.
That I can't tell you how many fish I've caught with being stuck in the grass with a crankbait, and then when it pops out, I'll still have all kinds of grass on the bait, and they'll still grab it.
That's crazy. I don't know. I'm gonna try this year. Really gonna try. Now, obviously, you fish kayak tournaments. You fish with the Kayak Bass Anglers of Maine up there. How do you feel about the way that all these tournaments going, like the mainstream tournaments? Do you feel it's going to make this more like the bass boat world, and we're going to lose that love that we have for this whole kayak fishing?
Well, I'm honestly torn on that subject, because I think what we'll see over the next probably 3 or 4 years as this grows, we'll definitely see more entrants into the tournaments. But I think what we'll end up finding is the I don't know, how do I want to say this? The amount, the camaraderie you have with like the 15 guys or whatever that you fish with,
right,
it is going to lessen over time. But I would like to see myself in the tournaments up here where, let's just hold kayak opens. Let's just get 30 guys on the water. And, there's so many angles right now with the cheat. We saw the board cheating there in that last one. And there's all kinds of things going on. So I'd like to think that the general majority of people are being honest with what they're doing. So yeah, let's get 30 guys out there. Let's get at it. I think the biggest thing from the kayak perspective is, if there's only one launch on a big lake, you kind of limit where you can go, because you can't go fast in a kayak.
Right.
And if you're in a battery powered kayak, you probably can't go to the end of the lake and back.
Exactly. Especially up where you are. I mean, where I live here in Rhode Island, I can go around every single body of water we have during a tournament. I can literally cover the entire bank of every body of water during a tournament.
Yeah, see, we have, like I said, that Lake Schoodic that I was talking about earlier, you couldn't kick paddle that baby in 2 days.
Right.
If you tried to paddle it, you'd never make it. But even with a pedal drive or a battery would never make it. So you're talking a big body of water that's 120 feet deep, can kick up 3 and 4 foot waves in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
If the wind picks up. So I think once we start getting onto these bigger bodies of water, and there's more places for people to go, it's going to change. It's definitely going to change the landscape, I think, and I'm hoping it's going to be for the better.
Right. So you
I
like, you don't think that the whole camaraderie thing's gonna stop, and it's just gonna be everybody shows up on Saturday, they just fish, and then they go home, kind of like it is in the bass boat world. You show up to a tournament, you
Yeah,
guys fish, you weigh in, go home. Like I
I think that's gonna happen.
yeah, I kind of think so
You know,
too.
I hope that there's still a core group of guys I think that will hang out and fish, just for fun on other lakes. But I think as it grows, it's definitely gonna turn into a more of a, hey, it's Saturday, it's fishing day, and then you won't see them again until the next tournament.
Right, right. I'd have to agree there. I think it's,
Also,
but I think the local clubs could stay, with that camaraderie, especially here where we're only allowed like 20, 25 people on a body of water. So you
right,
got the same guys showing up every week. So I think the grassroots kind of clubs, those clubs just still have that. But I think on the mainstream KBF Trail, Hobie Trail, Bass Trail, I think you're going to start to see things fall apart as far as groups of people hanging together. It might get a little clicky. You see it already a little bit. You got this click and this click
yeah,
and this click. Kind of like you're back in high school.
right. And to just add to that too, I thought, I was gonna bring that up. That's kind of where I was going next. Was now that I think kayak fishing has really hit the mainstream big. I mean, it's being picked up by Bass and by Hobie and by all these other companies, and I think it's exploded. It's really exploded in the past 2 years,
Right.
at least from what I've seen. I think that it's great that I can go and fish a tournament on wherever that most recent one was there, Lake. Oh God, I can't even remember the name of the lake now, but it was a BASS tournament.
Oh, the Logan Martin.
And
Logan Martin.
Logan Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Logan Martin. So I think that as a kayak angler and as a relatively new kayak angler, I could take my kayak down there and go for it.
Right.
I couldn't do that with my bass boat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we're in that transition period where people are going to get to fish in some of these really, really awesome events, even if they're not any good.
Right. Right.
Like we had people that went down to that and they caught a sunfish.
Yeah.
Going to cut it in the real world,
right,
in these big tournaments. But right now, because it's on the rise and it's an exploding sport, and I think there's a lot coming in the next 5 years. We're old guys,
right.
In the next 5 years, I'll be lucky to sit in a kayak. You know what I'm saying? So
no, come on, look at Rod. Rod's still doing it, and Rod's got to be older than you.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But these young guys that are coming up right now really have an amazing opportunity to put their foot in the door and get somewhere with this.
Right. And eventually there is going to be that separation. Just like they have now. There's going to be pro
right.
and amateur level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't wait to see
right now.
Yeah.
Right, but right now the gate's open, man. If you've got the time and the energy to put in,
and the money,
and the money, of course, yeah, and the money. But that's it. It's a big thing right now, and you can travel all around and fish some of these big tournaments and get noticed by people. That's been the biggest thing, is getting noticed by some of these, larger companies like the Strike King, Z-Man, and all these other, these big brands that are just looking for the next thing to jump on.
Right.
And if you're that 25, 26-year-old good-looking guy or whatever, or even good-looking female,
right,
and you do well at a couple of tournaments, that they're going to start taking notice.
Exactly. And we're seeing it now. I mean, some of these, Plano just signed Christine Fisher. I mean, Plano is one of the biggest names in fishing. I mean, who doesn't have Plano boxes? Yeah. And they signed Christine Fisher. I mean, like, that's a kayak angler.
Yeah.
There's all types of people that are being signed daily, really, lately. It seems like now that Bass has put their name on kayak fishing, these big companies are all over it.
Yeah, and they're not going to miss an opportunity to make a few dollars.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you know, and let's be honest. I mean, if you got your Kevin Van Dams out there in the world, how much tackle does Kevin Van Dam need?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, versus Ken Mitchell and his kayak.
Right.
They can throw me a handful of baits and put their name all over my stuff, and it costs them, nothing really.
Right. Nothing.
Versus, you got, Kevin Van Dams of the world that it costs a lot of money to put that name on something.
Exactly.
So I think there's a big opportunity for people right now in the kayak fishing world to get out there and be in these tournaments and get noticed and do well and maybe turn what would have been you know a, a club fishing event into a pro type sponsored career.
Right. Right. That's kind of why I started the show. Give some local guys a little exposure. There's always that local stick that doesn't travel out of his state, but yet in his state, and he just hammers away. So that's kind of why I started this whole show for the Northeast, was so guys could get a little exposure and feel good about
Right.
themselves, and maybe give them a little confidence to travel and see what they can do on the road.
Yeah, because I'm a firm believer that it only takes a couple of good events and the right people watching for it to potentially take off.
Right, right. How about your plans for kayak tournaments? Are you planning on doing any of the KBF trails?
Yeah, so the plan for this year, we've kind of looked at doing the Northeast Trail. I think it was 5 events. The first one, I believe, was Lake George in New York.
Yep.
So I've been heavily looking at that trail, and so so that's kind of my plan as well. I want to fish that trail, not because I think I'm a pro or I'm going to get any sort of sponsorship money, but more because I want to just fish different places.
Right. Yeah.
I've never been to Lake George. I've never been to some of those places. So tossing my kayak in and kicking around, and checking it out, I think would be a lot of fun. And for what it would have cost me to run a bass tournament in the bass boat up here in Maine, I can probably take the kayak to New York and probably get that done.
Right. Right. That's kind of my plan this year. Also, is just traveling to these places and looking at it as a fishing trip. I think I stressed myself out a little bit too much last season and didn't do as well as I wanted to. So this year I'm just gonna just go fishing. I'm just gonna throw the boat in the back of the truck and just go fishing. Do what I would
Yeah,
do on any normal day.
right, exactly. I think that people get so frazzled by being in a different type environment that they don't think, or they lose those fundamental skills that made them good at fishing anyway.
Right, right.
They get so stressed out about, I got to throw this bait. I'm in New York or I'm in
Yep.
whatever, and this guy's got whatever.
That's me.
But
That's me.
yeah, but let's be honest. The same baits catch fish consistently all the time.
Yeah. I think
know,
sometimes I give those fish a little too much credit and forget to realize that they're just stupid little green fish. And
right,
they're gonna eat it if it looks like something that needs to be eaten.
right, and I know I'm guilty of that, as well. Like, I would fish in the bass boat, and I would get so mad and so frustrated. I'd throw stuff overboard, and I just get irritated with, I know this bait will work. Why can't I catch anything? But I would just, it was because I was so irritated. I wasn't just settled into fishing it the way it should have been fished. I would be going too fast or too slow, or, and how to fish a jerk bait,
Yeah, right.
but you'd be jerking it so fast and getting pissed off that it wasn't working.
Right.
Throw the rod down, and you get to the launch and you get back to the weigh-in, and he's like, hey, what'd you catch yours on? I caught mine on an orange and black jerk bait. The same damn thing that you threw for 20 minutes and because so pissed off you didn't use it.
Yep. Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I've come back to the launch, and it's kind of a funny story because I didn't have the top of the line bass boat, but I had a pretty decent setup. And in our bass club in the earlier days, we had such a range of bass boats from, the Ranger with a 250 to a friggin' aluminum boat with a 25 horse motor
Right.
and a cooler rigged up for a live well. And the guy with the friggin' cooler would win about 35% of the tournaments.
Right. Because he's just going out there and just going fishing.
Because he couldn't go anywhere fast. He had to fish a certain pattern because he couldn't do what you do in a bass boat. But every time you come back to the launch, he'd come back with 5 fish that were nice. You saw him in the lake 2 or 3 times that day because you passed him. And you'd say, and his name happened to be Bob. Bob, what'd you use today? Oh, black and blue stick bait, the ones I got from you. Boys, I'll tell you, if that don't piss you off, because it's the same thing I threw all day.
Yep.
But I was going clearly too fast for them to work. And Bob in his 25 horsepower boat was catching 5-pounders in 6 inches of water because he was just going slow.
Right.
So I think having that confidence if you're fishing a jig, then to be confident in what you're doing. If it's not working, it's just not working. But, if you can sit after an hour or so, say, I feel like I've been doing this the right way, then change it up.
Right.
But I think what happens is, what happens to me a lot is I'll throw 5 casts and be like, oh, I didn't catch nothing. I got to go throw this.
Yeah, that's me. That's me too.
Yeah, and I'll throw it down and be like, damn it. I didn't catch nothing on a crankbait. I got to go throw this. And I'll spend time tying things on and messing with stuff. And, next thing you know, you're 100 casts short because you've been screwing around for frigging around with baits.
Right. You've been driving around the lake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had many of those days.
So what are you talked about your fishing grab bag goal of reaching 1,000 monthly buyers. But what about as far as fishing? What are some goals for you this fishing season?
Well, my goal is always the same when it comes to fishing tournaments, and that's pretty much to win.
Yeah.
I don't fish I fish to win.
Okay.
Which is why I get so frustrated when I don't. And I know that there's guys that let's take Lake George for example. I know there's guys that are going to go there that know every spot on the lake.
Right.
But I also know that I can catch fish in any environment. I just got to find 5 good fish that day.
Right.
So I typically, even when I had the bass boat, if I knew that they were going to fish, this rock pile and that rock pile, and that's where all the fish were, I might go hit this bank and that set of trees because it was different.
Right.
And a lot of times that paid off for me. So I think, the goal is always to win, but also to take it with a grain of salt because I'm not a Kevin Van Dam and, I'm not going to do 6 hours of research on Lake George. I looked at the Google map. I thought, geez, that's a pretty big lake. So I got plenty of spots to go hit. So
yeah, me, I'm the guy looking at it for 6 hours.
Yeah, and I looked at it for about 6 minutes, and I said, well, geez, that's a big lake. I'll put in wherever I can put in, and I'll just go at it.
Right.
I got 8 hours to cover as much ground as I can, or 6 hours, or whatever it is.
Yep.
So if I come by a stump or I come by a pile of trees, I'm gonna pick it apart.
Yep.
And hopefully pull off, 5 fish over 20 inches.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal.
Right.
And that's my goal. Even when I fish up here, I've been hitting a lot of spots that I've never fished before. I'll pull up on a rock pile and say, well, shit, let's hit that, or let's hit that tree, or let's do whatever, and a lot of times it's been hit or miss, especially in the kayak, because I haven't been to these spots before. I've never, like I said, I look at the Google map for 6 minutes and say, oh, there's the launch. That's where I'm putting in at. spots to fish. So I've had a lot of fun doing that, and I really, really, I don't miss the bass boat one bit.
Yeah, I can't say that I miss mine either. I'm definitely happy
Nope.
with a kayak.
Nope, I don't miss it at all. And even my wife said after I sold it, she said, maybe in a year or two we can get another one. And I honestly I haven't had the urge, not at all.
I don't blame you. It's too
So
much maintenance, too much money.
Yeah, too much maintenance, too much money, and it is for me. It was too consistent. Honestly, I felt like I just really don't want to fish the same lakes every year.
Right.
Now I can do that on my own. I don't need to pay $200 to go do it.
Right. All right. Last question. Top 5 anglers of all time.
Holy crap!
It can be anybody. It doesn't even have to be a pro. It doesn't have to be a pro. It can be anybody.
Top 5 anglers of all time. Well, I got to put me at number 1.
Why not?
I think that's reasonable. So I'll tell you my top 5 anglers, and I'll probably say that a lot of people will disagree with this, but Gerald Swindle, number 1 for me.
He's my number 1 also.
Top of the chain.
Yep.
I don't know what it is about him that I like, but for some reason I gravitate towards him. He just seems like a solid professional. Always fishing, always. He's got that same attitude that I have. Like, it's always a competition. And I can appreciate that. I mean, you got to put Kevin Van Dam up there just because, he's won however many classics. I mean, he certainly knows what he's doing. I would put Mike Iaconelli in that category. Because he's passionate. I think,
right.
If nothing else, he's passionate about fishing. I think that shows in his, he does he does some of the kid stuff, the tournaments and getting kids on the water. And I think that even if you're not the best angler in the world, if you can pass that on to the next generation, I think that's a big deal.
It is. It's a very big deal.
Yeah. So I think I would definitely put him in that category for sure. Let's see. Top 5. That's 3. I would have to go with, my dad, of course, because that's who put it on me. I can't tell you growing up that I wasn't fishing at least every other weekend or every weekend, somewhere in the state, right, traveling, So I would say that he taught me that passion as well. So I would definitely have there. And I don't know about best angler in the world, but one person that I find that seems to be out there and fishing a lot and posting pictures, and I honestly haven't seen her much lately, but I don't know. Do you know Amy Johnson?
Yes.
Amy J?
Yes.
I'd throw her in that category. Not necessarily the best, but I think she enjoys being out on the water.
Right.
And she just has a certain zeal about her. I've met her a couple times, and she has a certain, like, I can't explain it. But she's not just that person holding a rod and taking pictures. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think the sport helps to have women in that role to promote that to our women in the world, because it's such a male-dominated sport. You don't see a lot of women.
Right.
I think passing that on to them is a big deal as well.
Yeah,
so I would throw her in there.
I think it is too, especially nowadays with some of the things these younger women have as role models to look up to, that are not such role models, if you know what I mean.
Right. Absolutely.
These Cardi B's and whoever else, they're not They're not the woman that
Yeah,
I want my daughter to be looking up to. I'd rather have her looking up to an Amy J or a Christine Fisher or a Scylla
yeah,
Johnson.
absolutely. Yeah,
You know,
and I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's such a the suicide rate is so high right now in these kids, and
Eh, eh,
and I feel like growing up, whenever I was stressed out or whenever shit was going wrong, I grabbed my fishing rod and I went out.
right.
I could release all the stress in the world.
Yep.
And I think that outdoors element, that getting on the being outdoors is severely lacking in this new.
It definitely is. They're stuck on their phones.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we are on our phones.
Ar-
But truly though, I think that's a big deal, and being able to to promote the Amy J's and the Christines of the world to these younger kids that just don't see it.
right.
They're, like you said, they're worried about their bling and how many diamonds they can fit in their mouth, and that's just not reality.
Exactly. And
I mean, it's
everybody can grab
great,
a fishing pole and go fishing.
right? I mean, you can get a 29 at Walmart and go out and catch
Right.
fish, but you're not to wear half naked clothes and put all this crap on your face and tattoo your face up, and that's just not reality unless you live in a certain lifestyle. And it's I think a lot of that's being missed.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ken, I want to say thank you for coming on. I'll let you thank anybody that you want to thank. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I want to just thank you, man, for having us on and helping promote the fishing grab bag. And we're always up to chat about fishing. You know that.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, Thanks for coming on the show, and I look forward to promoting Fishing Grab Bag some more, and I hope it definitely becomes very successful for you.
Yes, and I will hope that as well. And we'll be sending a box your way this month.
Awesome, awesome. I can't wait. All right, have a good night, Ken.
All right, man. We'll catch you later.
All right, guys. You heard it here first. Fishing Grab Bag. Go and get yourself one. They got all different levels, $19.99, $49.99, $99.99, all different packages in between there for different styles of anglers. So make sure you head over to fishinggrabbag.com. Grab yourself a fishing grab bag. Check it out. If you missed part of the episode, go back and watch it. He revealed what was in the $20 box. And for me, I mean, that's worth $20, man. It really was. There was no garbage in it like you get in some of those other boxes. I mean, I subscribe to those other boxes, and half of it goes in my kids' tackle box or in the garbage, because that's what it is. It's garbage. So go get yourself a fishing grab bag. Tell Ken I sent you. Enjoy your night, guys. Tight lines, good times. See you next time. Peace.